Yeah, just to start off, I would love to hear kind of how you got into TikTok and how you became a creator and what made you want to do it, and why you're so interested in crypto and stocks and personal finance.
Yeah, definitely. It's a new discovery of mine actually. So it's a little interesting, but I started back in November generally learning about the stock market. And I feel like I tell this story all the time, but it just is like the epitome of exactly how I stumbled into it was um I was transitioning between jobs and wanted to just stay active in my personal finances. And I didn't have a lot of familiarity with the stock market or investing. And so I reached out to my dad who does this kind of stuff. And he's like, well, it depends. Like, are you bullish or bearish? And I was like, excuse me? Like, I have no idea what you just asked me. And so like the fact that I just had no conceptual understanding of anything finance related. Like to ask someone if they're bullish or bearish genuinely seems to be one of those most basic questions. Everyone should understand the language, and I didn't. And so I started learning about it a little bit, and I realized there were a lot of terms that just sounded like kind of gatekeepy terms, where it was just make the language really complex to keep the outsiders out. And I decided to just start teaching myself through a very like visual and kinetic way by making videos. So my TikTok was really just a way for me to creatively make a fool out of myself and hopefully get some giggles out of it and whatnot. It was all the concepts that I was learning personally. So I started that, and it seemed to resonate with some people. So I kept doing it, and over time, it's actually become a source of income as well. So now I'm doing it full time as a creator, and um, not doing great in my trades, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. So,
Still learning every day, right? Yeah, so I guess did you know that this was going to become a full-time job? Did you want this to become a full-time job? I mean, I know that you had some other job that you had quit to do this, but I would love to hear kind of more about that story too.
yeah, definitely. So, like I said, when I started learning about it, I was actually at a period of time where I was living off of my savings account. And I was searching for jobs, and I can't even like truthfully, I've never had a problem getting a job. Even like simple. At one point, I was like, forget it. I'm just gonna go work at Starbucks. Like I don't know, because it was just getting so complicated and so difficult. And I was like, why is it so hard? And I started resonating with people who were like genuinely job searching during the pandemic and couldn't find anything. And I'm married, but my husband had lost both of his jobs during the pandemic. He was working at a school and a gym. So it was like both those things shut down. We were living off of our savings. And at that point, I just was like, the finance thing was a second thought. It was just something for me to be able to do right by what I had remaining while I found a job. So around January, I got a job. Around January is also when I kind of blew up on TikTok. And so the two coming together at the exact same time, I had a lot of people reaching out like, we'd like to sponsor your videos. We'd like to do this or that. How can we work with you? We like the way that you talk about things. And I just very quickly shut everyone down. For probably up until March, I didn't even consider it. I was March 2021.
Wow.
I didn't, yeah, I don't think I took up a single partnership until maybe a month and a half ago. And it was with an app that was the first app I ever downloaded, which was TradingView. I was like, well, you're the only app that I use every single day, so I guess I'll take up a partnership. But I didn't think of things as like, I didn't think of this as a career. I didn't intend for it to be, I didn't even intend for it to make money. But when I realized that there was the opportunity there and coming together with me really, really enjoying what I was doing, um, more so than what I was doing in my job, that's the point where that was the tipping point where I was like, I like this more than my job. And I don't know how to balance that because I don't want to tell people that I'm a full time TikToker.
Well, and now you do, and right. I mean, now
Yeah.
it's kind of where you are, and it seems
Yeah.
to be working out really well. I would love to hear kind of how do you grow, an account? How do you become big? You have something like over 100,000 followers now, right?
hmm Which is funny that you say that, because 100,000 is actually small in the
Yeah,
realm of
yeah.
creators on TikTok. Like, if I were to have seen, I have a couple friends who randomly have, before I was on TikTok, I was like, I'm sorry, you have 1,000 views on something? That's crazy. Like, oh my gosh, you have 5,000 followers? That's nuts. And so for me, I was like, that's a big deal. And then I get into the creator world, and it's like, we're looking for people with 500,000 or 1 million followers. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. This is just so new. But what I would say is it genuinely is with TikTok, it's a little bit of creativity and luck. Like, you do have to create good content. But I do think that I created good content early on, which I know is supposedly good for the algorithm. I've given up on trying to understand the algorithm at this point. My two main things are engagement over reach. So if I have 100,000 followers and I'm interacting with 10,000 of them, that's huge, as opposed to someone who might have 500,000 followers and be interacting with 12,000 of them. So I try to keep that reminder that there's this one video where it's like, uh, 30 viewers might not be a lot, but if 30 people walk through that door right now to see what I was doing, I would be overwhelmed. So I try to keep that mentality where I'm like, honestly, however a video performs, as long as I'm putting out work, which is the second thing, work that I personally am proud of, that's the second thing. So engage with the community that's out there and that's responding, no matter how big or how small, and then create good content that I'm personally proud of.
Right, and that led to interviewing Vlad Tenev. Like that was huge, So even though you don't describe
Yeah.
yourself as like huge
Yeah.
on TikTok, you still managed to, have like a niche audience that,
Yeah.
and then you got the founder of Robinhood.
Right. Yeah. So the third pillar is shoot your shot.
And
Which,
you got to talk to Mark Cuban briefly as well, right? So
yes.
how did all of that happen? I guess we can start with like Vlad. I would love to hear like how you got a hold of him.
Yeah. I think that um, when everything happened with GameStop, a lot of people approached Robinhood very aggressively and wanted just everything to be reopened. And I approached it with a lot of curiosity. And that's granted, I wasn't I didn't have a lot of money in the market, so I wasn't angry. I also wasn't trading meme stocks, so I wasn't putting a lot of money into meme stocks, is what I should say. I participated, but I really wanted to understand like what was happening behind the scenes. So I put a video out there, and like I said, third pillar, shoot your shot. I just was like, Vlad Tenev, I'm just gonna call you out. I want answers, and I addressed him directly. Now, granted, I think because I was under the pseudonym Robinhood Kid,
Mhm.
that at the time probably was helpful. I know that Robinhood had at one point been aware of my name. Prior to that, within my first 3 weeks of being on the platform, they were aware of my presence on TikTok. So I know that
They
goes.
didn't like sue you or ask for the name or
I
anything.
know. And I think, and granted, like if I could keep the name Robin Hood Kid, I absolutely would. I love that. I think the story behind the name is actually one of my most favorite things, which is just that it's new kids in the market, and most people use Robinhood. And so with everyone getting in, everyone knows that Robinhood completely invaded the industry. It's no surprise to even the larger brokerages, to do commission-free trading. So I like the name, but it definitely came with its pros and cons. So I think all of that came together to get me that interview with Vlad, which was awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, what did you guys talk about? I got to watch a couple of the clips, but and then how was he? Was he cool?
Yeah. I got to have a couple phone calls with him, and the interviews that you probably saw, we talked about Doge. We talked about how he felt about, investors, if he had anything that he wanted to say to investors about everything that happened in January.
He wasn't popular at that point, right? So
Right. We talked about a couple other things that Robinhood offers, and just through the platform and what they hope especially because my audience is younger and new. I asked about whether they'd offer, educational courses at some point, free resources like that, or custodial accounts, which I know there's a lot of young, it's younger and younger. I have 13, 14-year-olds that message me and are like, how do I sign up? And I'm like, you can't quite yet unless XYZ. So we
right.
talked about that, and that was good. But overall, like, you know, talking with him, I'm like, he's a dad, he's a husband, he's very level-headed. It seemed like when it was off camera and not recording, like he was just a very genuine person. We talked about our favorite coffee shop in Orange County, which is where I'm from. So like it just was very, very casual, and he seemed um, you know, contrary to the popular opinion, just very normal.
Right. Yeah, that popular opinion is, a mix of so many different things that happened, and it's
Yeah,
kind of always like outside the founder
right.
themselves. Yeah, you mentioned like kids basically, messaging you. What is the state of like financial literacy from what you've seen? Like, are people, do you feel like young people are now learning more than ever, or do you feel like, they're not and need to? Like, because I know that
Hmm.
part of your thing is to, teach people, and sometimes you're teaching people concepts that you've just learned, which is great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much all that I'm doing. It's teaching people concepts that I've just learned,
Right.
which I actually don't think is necessarily a bad thing, considering like a lot of people don't realize that. I've talked to multiple TikTokers about this. I'm like, how much research do you put into one 30 to 60-second TikTok? And we're like, oh, 6 hours, usually 6 hours. It's huge. I mean, we spend, and this is people who have also been in the finance industry for, one of my friends, Kayla, who goes by Kai.now, she says she puts hours and hours into research, and she's been in finance for years and years and years. And so, like, people that are creating good content put time into it, but um, yeah, I think the general demographic and the response that I've been getting from people and what I've seen financially is at least in the niche that I've found, which is female, predominantly female. It's about over 70% female. And they're between the ages of 20, well, I would probably say 17 to 29 or so, 25.
Okay.
And I posted a video very recently that was a little embarrassing, but I acted like an 8-year-old and talked about the stock market as if I were an 8-year-old walking my neighbor Karen's dog to earn money to put away into an investing account. And I had so many, I can't even tell you how many comments were on that video of like, I didn't realize that I needed someone to explain it to me this way, or like, can everything be explained to me this way? Or I'm 31 years old and I've never understood the stock market until you explained it to me like I was a kindergartner. Like, there are people out there that we assume, like myself, I assume that I'm supposed to understand everything about the finance industry going into it. And when you can just come to the terms that it's okay to not understand something and then to ask questions, a lot of people are really scared of asking questions. But the people that do ask questions, we find answers together.
Right, right. Yeah, so what have been the most surprising things that you've learned, or maybe even myths that you've, debunked or found that like were totally not true?
Hmm. I think I'm still figuring that out a little bit. I
Yeah.
think that um, what I'm finding specifically in the markets right now are a mixture of in the market and with my content. For example, I'm finding a 12% annual return very easy to achieve right now. And I occasionally post videos where I'll use a 12% annualized return. And the amount of people that lash back and say, this is way too high, you should be gauging 7%. And I intentionally choose numbers like that because I want people to think about, I think investing should be passive, but I think there's an active level where you can do even more towards your financial future if you're engaging in the conversation a little bit more. But I'm shocked at how many people are so aggressive towards being a little ambitious, and I mean, you see that with everything, with GameStop and with AMC. It's like you have ambitious new ideas, or Robinhood giving commission-free trading or whatever it is, and people get aggressive towards it. Like you can't change the system, and I didn't realize just how many barriers there were to jump over, even as a female in the industry, which has been, a whole nother story. But
Yeah, before we get to that, I guess, mentioning GameStop and AMC, I would love to ask you, how do you feel about meme stocks? Because you talked about passive investment, and that should be kind of the main thing in your opinion. But I mean, these are stocks that kind of drove people to Robinhood in the first place and got them into
yeah,
stocks and investing. And do you think that they're doing more good than harm, or the opposite maybe?
it's tough because I wish I could just analyze a really large group of people very quickly, but I can't. So I have a sociology background, and a lot of that has to do with designing research. And so when I give answers, I'm like, well, this has a flaw and this has a flaw. So what I would say from the conversations that I've had, I think that people are more open to talking about finances in general than they ever have before. I think more people are thinking about their retirement and their financial futures than I've seen ever before. Is that just because I'm now engaging in the content more often? Maybe, possibly, that could be a factor. But I also think that, I have a friend that came up to me yesterday and said, like, hey, I bought stocks and I don't know what to do now, and I'm like, okay, so we'll have some of that. But I think that, if anything, it's at least bringing people into the conversation. And for someone like myself who never felt welcomed into the conversation, something like GameStop or AMC, if that's just how you got into the conversation, that's how you did it. And, a lot of people will critique that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't think that that means that it's going to be this short-term mega burnout of a lot of young people. I think you'll probably see a bit more increase in interest in overall financial wellness over the next however many years.
Right. So, right, because then, maybe these young people, these youngsters will, move on from meme stocks, or just learn more about, what goes on. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of a hopeful future. Yeah. What advice would you give to I guess anybody who doesn't know anything about these things and doesn't know how to find a way in, and like is interested?
Yeah, I think everyone else is in your shoes too. For the most part, the majority of people are probably in those same shoes. And I think most people are probably insecure about entering the conversation. The only advice that I honestly would give is that if you understand that there are a lot more people in your shoes than you think, it makes asking the seemingly stupid questions easier. I would also give advice to people who have been in the industry, and when they have someone ask, what does it mean to be bullish or bearish? Be patient and be honest. And like, I think that finding a new approach to explaining those things is really important. So with so many new people like myself included coming into financial systems and the stock market and whatnot, um, the only way that I was able to, excuse me, to succeed is because people were willing to take the time to answer in new and creative ways. And if I didn't have the support and the encouragement from people letting me ask silly questions, I would have very quickly exited the space. So, yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you also mentioned like you do so much research. I'm curious how that goes and who these, who are the people you're talking to and asking those stupid questions to and
Right.
sources that you check up on.
Yeah. So there's a couple things. My basic research starts with usually, and I know this doesn't sound like research, but also as a college student, I'm confident this is exactly what I did in university. So
Let me guess,
I,
Wikipedia.
yeah, exactly. No, almost Investopedia is where I
Okay,
start.
that's a trusted resource for us as well.
Oh, good. Okay, that makes me, because usually the Opedia, I'm like, oh, dang it. Okay, good luck to me.
Right.
But yeah, so I actually start on a typically something like YouTube or a podcast or a resource that a friend sends, and I'll begin diving into that. When I stumble into a concept that is mentioned in that specific resource that I don't understand, I basically create like a web diagram. So I
Mhm.
have my starting resource and then concepts I don't understand, and then concepts that come from those. So, I'll look up like what is an option because they're like, oh, if you trade options. And I'm like, shoot, okay, options. And then it's like, well, it depends, calls or puts. I'm like, okay, here we go again, and it starts to create this web of um, complexity. And then I just take time to go through basic terms, and then I start to learn more about all that side of things. And then it comes into, so there's that's my personal side of things. And then there's also, whether it be via Twitter spaces or TikTok live is the most embarrassing when someone's like, well, how do you feel about this? What's the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA? I'm like, oh, well, that is a great question. Let's learn that together now. Like that's how new it is.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's engaging with other people. That's the second aspect of it. Being open to saying like, I'm gonna figure that out right now. And then yeah, Twitter Spaces is nice because a lot of people you can request to be a speaker. So someone will say something, I'll request and just say like, can you elaborate on that? And then they elaborate, and that's awesome to have those. I know some people use Clubhouse or things like that. So a lot of it is this social driven conversation. And then the last thing might be I'll stumble upon someone on social media that I'm inspired by their posts or whatever it might be, and I'll just shoot my shot, send them a DM, and ask if they're willing to explain it to me. And a lot of people, and granted, I'm grateful that I have had the platform to get a lot of yeses, but will set up calls and walk me through, seemingly basic concepts.
Yeah, that's excellent. And who are some people, either on TikTok or any influencers that you admire, like doing crypto or stock stuff?
Yeah. Well, for example, on TikTok, people that I talk to on a regular um, would be, like I said, Kyla is someone that I talk to occasionally. And I remember so she's like macroeconomics. And I know there's a term like hawkish and dovish, which the first time we ever met up, she's like, well, yeah, I guess it's like if you're hawkish or and I was like, dang it, more animals. There's more animals, and so
Animals, actually.
right, get rid of the animals. And so that's been a good relationship to have, and those have been good conversations. Another TikToker by the name of Austin Hankwitz has been someone who's been really helpful, and he's also in the stocks and news realm. And it's funny to say news when you're just a TikToker, but that's how it is. Errol Coleman is someone who is also on TikTok, and him and I exchange trading ideas. So he shorts small cap stocks. That's like his technique. And we trade together on Tasty Trade, and we just trade options together live with that team, and which is another resource that has been like beyond helpful when it comes to learning. They have spent the past 6 months just live teaching Errol and I how to trade options.
Wow.
So that has been an incredible blast. I've loved every part of that. And then in the Twitter realm, there's too many to talk about, just because I am definitely on meme financial Twitter, which is fun. But if you can get into the DMs of some of these memes, they're actually brilliant people. And so there's a lot of people on that platform that I'm incredibly grateful. You'd be absolutely shocked with the intelligence of some of these people that just dedicate their lives to making memes on Twitter.
Yeah, well, it takes like knowledge to like get to the humor of something. You have to know it well to see what's funny. No, totally. Like it's part of satire. Like I saw you had a conversation with Parikh Patel, and I thought that was hilarious because like I'm reading him every day. He just pops up everywhere. Um,
Yes. I mean, he's been one of the greatest resources to be able to just message and, ask questions about value investing. Like he knows his stuff. So
yeah, no, that's good to hear actually. For from someone who's spoken with him. I guess my last question is just what is next for your videos and what projects do you have lined up, if any? I would just love to like hear what's on the horizon.
yeah. I am hoping in the near future to find a way to kind of shift my stocks TikTok page into something that resonates a little bit more with what my initial goals were, specifically in college and what I studied in college. So
Hmm.
I studied sociology and anthropology. I also minored in religion, which is just like such a random thing, but all of that kind of bringing together the way that like human behavior and especially an attempt at a non-biased just observation of human behavior, and um, and going into the wealth and inequality gap and how those behaviors and different socioeconomic statuses, depending on where there's just so much that goes into it. I don't even know how to not stumble upon all of the intensity of the things that I learned, but I just, I did a very deep dive into homelessness my senior year, and that's what my whole thesis was on. And understanding that the concepts are really, really complex when it comes to vulnerable populations. And so a lot of my goal, hopefully over the next year, would be to transition my page just slightly to open the concept up to, as it has been, definitely to minority populations, and to broadening that conversation and kind of helping open that conversation specifically to just any general vulnerable population to figure out finances together, because it's not easy for me. I know it's not easy for a lot of people, and bridging a massive wealth gap has been seemingly impossible for a lot of people. And I guess I would call it helping industries, but it's even tough to call it that. So I don't know what that looks like exactly, but I think that will sort of trickle into the next year of content specifically.